horizon broke apart, mending and fracturing again, as it always did above the pale expanse. From a distance, the air seemed to convulse. Bands of turquoise water, lines of date palms, towers made of copper-colored glass, only to melt back into the bleached monotone of the sand. Aaliyah knelt and pressed her wrist compass into the ground until the delicate needle steadied. 42 degrees west, due for the next marker rock. Good. She secured the compass, slung her goatskin canteen, and raised the half-moon of stained crystal that hung from her belt. Nizar, creaking at the knees, lowered himself beside her. "Show me," he said. Aaliyah angled her prism shield so that the sunlight pierced its serrated panes, refracting through laminated slivers of quartz and obsidian strung on copper wire. In the reflection, the turquoise water vanished. The date palms folded into ghosts. The glass towers collapsed into raw heat. Only the dune ridge, bare as an upturned ribcage, remained. Truth. Nizar exhaled. "The Mirage Ministry is broadcasting full spectrum today," he muttered. "They must suspect traffic." "They suspect everything," Aaliyah replied. She collapsed the shield and clipped it back to her belt. "Caravanners reported new projection dishes outside the capital. If we're seeing them here, the network's range has doubled. Which means we reach Generator 9 tonight, or we don't reach it at all," Nizar said. He pulled up his scarf and motioned onward. They trudged. Each footfall released the faint squeal of silica, a sound that could fool the ear into thinking the dunes were alive and whispering. Around them unfolded a theater scripted by bureaucrats hundreds of kilometers away. Caravansiers in white linens waved from non-existent outposts. A row of fountains arced crystalline water across invisible courtyards, and banners bearing the seal of the sun, Regent, fluttered over a phantom parade ground. To the casual pilgrim, these spectacles offered comfort, proof of a benevolent ruler whose prosperity spilled even to the wastelands. But Aaliyah had grown up in the Weaver's Alley of South Oregon, where the salt smog ate children's lungs and propaganda operas played on every street corner. She no longer believed in comfort. By midday, the heat hammered at them so fiercely that the dunes quivered like membranes. Nizar insisted on a brief halt beneath the only shade the desert granted, a tattered canopy of matte fabric stretched on collapsible poles. Aaliyah spilled a slip of water onto her sand-stained scarf, dabbed her neck, then studied the smear of mountain that anchored the northern skyline. The peaks looked near, but distance was a liar here. "How old were you?" she asked. "The first time you saw a true oasis?" Nizar lifted one brow. 17. I was carrying dispatches for the rebellion then too. Stumbled on a rill that hadn't yet been mapped by the ministry. You? "I haven't," Aaliyah said. "Not once." Nizar clicked his tongue with sympathy, rummaging in his satchel until he produced a tiny tin vial. He twisted off the cap and dropped 2 dull green tablets onto her palm. Alginate sodium, for the cramps you refused to mention. She took the pills dry, ignoring the bitter glaze they left on her tongue. Silence settled between them, not awkward, but taut with the knowledge that stillness cost time. She folded the canopy, and together they ventured once more into the shimmering furnace. Hours later, the dunes parted to reveal a series of standing stones, arranged like a compass rose. Aaliyah almost smiled. They had found the 8th marker, last reliable signpost before Generator 9. Beyond lay less chartable country, flayed by crosswinds and crawling dunes that could smother a whole caravan overnight. Yet, at the stone's base, someone had scattered a message in bright blue chips of ceramic. REPENT. Aaliyah crouched, Those chips hadn't been here when the runners passed last cycle. Heresy preachers, she murmured. Nizar's jaw hardened. Or something worse. Look there. He pointed east, where the ministry's projections frothed into a spectacle grander than any they'd yet seen. A city, luminous and thriving, walled in ivory. Minarets soared, domes flashed copper, and canals sliced the streets like ribbons of sapphire. At the gates, pilgrims knelt in ecstasy. All illusion. Alaika raised her prism shield again. Through its panes, the city warped into a mottled blur of spectral noise. A month ago, the illusions could fool even her for a heartbeat. Now the shield surrendered its secret instantly. She lowered it, but Nizar still stared at the Mirage bare-eyed. "Remember Copper Harbor?" he asked suddenly. She nodded. Everyone remembered the harbor, a coastal fishing town that the ministry had projected as raised by rebels, though in truth the government itself had torched it to drive coastal clans inland. Why? Because they learned pain is persuasive. Nizar's eyes, red with dust, glinted under his turban. If they've gone to the trouble of building that, he gestured toward the Phantom City, they will soon make it real by force. The ceramic chips crunching under her boot felt suddenly like an omen. She shoved them aside. "Come," she said. "We have to warn the Nine." They turned northwest, skirting the range of the false city. The ministry's broadcast beams thickened until even the air tasted metallic, like biting foil. Aaliyah flicked her tongue against her palate and spat. "Ionized," she said. "They've ramped the carrier frequency." Nizar cursed. "Means our prisms may fry before long." "Unless we shut the source down first." She touched the coil gun holstered at her hip. The weapon's ammunition, compressed glass slugs, was designed to shatter projection dishes without leaving metal fragments for trackers to scan. She'd never fired it against anything living, but she knew the physics, and physics cared little about nerves. Twilight smeared violet across the desert. Wind rose, carrying cold, serrated edges that sliced through cloth. By then, the projections had dimmed, but not vanished. Hollow lanterns bobbed above the Phantom City, lighting avenues that did not exist. Aaliyah's breath smoked in the air. She watched one lantern drift free of its invisible tether, flutter like a moth, and dissolve into static. Briefly, the desert darkened to honest nothingness. In that interval, a real figure appeared on the slope ahead, walking directly toward them. Nizar swung up his prism. The figure did not flicker. Real, then. Aaliyah stiffened, fingers splayed near her holster. But as the stranger came nearer, the first thing she noticed was the harness across his chest, bearing a triangular lattice of colored glass, a prism shield larger and more intricate than hers. "Wanderer," Nizar whispered, relief warring with caution. When the stranger stopped 3 paces away, Aaliyah studied him in full. He wore patchwork robes stitched from salvage cloth, each panel dyed a different color, so the garment looked like a shattered mosaic wrapped into human form. His face below the goggles was young, ghost-thin, unshaven. At his hip dangled a ceramic-handle scythe, the kind farmers once used to cut saltgrass before the inland sea receded. "You're heading to the Nine," he said, without preamble. His voice cracked from disuse. "So am I." Nizar shifted his weight. "Name? Cave. Purpose? Same as yours, I expect. Stop the lies." He tapped the prism shield on his chest with a brittle laugh. "I'm short on cartridges, long on rage." Aaliyah found herself half smiling. "We'll share cartridges if you share water." Kava nodded, unslung a skin heavy enough to make Nizar's brows lift, and handed it over. Aaliyah drank, then passed it to her mentor. The water tasted filtered, not brackish, a luxury in the wastes. I salvaged a treatment wand off a crashed cargo glider, Kava explained. Takes a while, but clears the salts. Handy, Nizar said, wiping his beard, but we travel silent. Kava accepted the rule with a shrug and fell in beside them. The three moved as shadows across the cooling sand, careful to keep dune ridges between themselves and the hovering glow of the burgeoning phantom city. Occasionally, Kava pointed out fresh footprints, ministry patrol boots, heavy and wide, that swerved in nonsensical curves, proof the patrol had been as dazzled by illusions as any wanderer without a prism. Alaya's confidence in the shield grew. At last they saw it, a thorn of metal jutting from the belly of a shallow basin. Generator 9. To the unshielded eye, it surely appeared as a simple sandhill, maybe a cluster of desert shrubs. Through their prisms, the disguise peeled away. The pylon's lower half was embedded in cooling fins like fanned daggers. At its summit, rotated a dish array the width of a grain barge, angling beams of coherent light into the sky. 2 auxiliary towers bristled with transmitter rods, each rod capped by a faceted ruby that glowed with internal power. "No guards?" Aliyah whispered. Kava crouched, adjusting goggles. "They trust the Mirage field. Anyone who gets near would just wander off to the city. Or dehydrate circling it," Nizar added grimly. Aliyah unslung her coil gun. Night had deepened enough that the projector's ruby caps gave the only illumination. Sanguine halos on steel. She ran through schematics in her head, blueprints stolen weeks ago from an archivist who believed the rebellion would protect her family in exchange. Weak points. Dish servo joints, cooling fin capacitors, central power couplings wrapped in ceramic. She touched Nizar's shoulder. "I go high. Take the dish. You two sever the power." Nizar shook his head. "We stay linked." "Somebody has to climb," she insisted. The conversation felt rehearsed, the outcome certain. Nizar relented. They advanced, prisms angled to warp residual illusions into harmless ribbons of color. Sand grated under boots, each crunch echoing louder than the last, until Aliyah's heart drummed in counter-rhythm. Still no alarms. She began scanning for trip lasers, standard ministry perimeter, but found none. Arrogant, she thought. At the base of the pylon, the cooling fins exhaled low frequencies, a thrumming bass that vibrated her teeth. She slotted the coil gun onto its sling and wedged her fingertips into a maintenance seam. Metal, though cold, provided purchase. Slowly she ascended, boots scraping, torso hugging the spine of the tower. Halfway up, she saw the first sign that something was wrong. A fresco, etched into the metal skin, rendered in acid so the lines glowed faintly yellow. It depicted figures kneeling before a colossal sun. The artist had scrawled one word beneath in a child's hand: "Believe." She climbed faster. Below, Kaveh and Nizar unpacked charges fashioned from re-rigged thermal batteries. Aliyah reached the dish platform, swung over the rail, and froze. A child stood there, maybe 13, head shaved, eyes wide with fear. He wore a ministry tech smock 2 sizes too large and a collar blinking red diagnostics. In his left hand was a remote detonator. Aliyah raised both palms. "Easy." The boy licked cracked lips. Sand caked his nostrils. "You can't shut it," he whispered. "If you do, they'll—" "Who?" Aliyah asked softly, stepping closer. The boy flinched, but did not press the detonator. "They said my village lives only because the city lives. Stop the city. They stop breathing." Tears streaked grit down his cheeks. "I don't want to kill them." Aliyah's mind whirred. A hostage protocol. The ministry wired entire communities to remote life support modules disguised as medical aid. The modules could be vented remotely. One miracle for one village, so long as the child at Generator 9 kept pressing affirm every hour. Convenient. If rebels destroyed the generator, the ministry would blame them for suffocation of innocents. She wanted to retch. Instead, she said, "What's your name?" "Rafik." "Rafik, I'm Aliyah." She took another step, slow. "My friends are below. They're not monsters. We want to help you make sure your village keeps breathing. Will you let me look at that remote?" Rafik hesitated. In the pause, Aliyah's ear caught a different sound. Distant rotor blades. She glanced up. Northward. 3 black specks shredded the stars. Transport gyros. Nizar's voice crackled softly in her earpiece. Must have decided to risk comms. "Hostiles inbound. Time short." Aliyah's brain plotted with brutal clarity. They could still cripple the dish before the gyros arrived, but the ministry would execute Rafik's village from orbit. Or they could retreat, no sabotage, condemn other villages to illusions. No solution preserved all lives. "Rafik," she said, "does your remote talk to the village through this tower?" He nodded, sniffing. "Yes. It's all one chain. And if we cut the chain but swap in a loopback, the village thinks the tower still speaks. They stay alive even if the dish goes dark." She said it with confidence she didn't feel. Rafik stared. "Can you?" Aliyah recalled the schematics. If she fused the handshake port, force-cycled the beacon, then divorced dish power from system auth. Maybe. Nizar would know better, but she was alone up here. "I need you to trust me," she said. Below, she heard Kaveh shout, "They're landing." Gunfire cracked. Ministry patrols finally present. Real bullets, not illusions. No time. Aliyah slipped her multi-tool from wrist to fingers, flicked the laser blade, and knelt by the control trunk. She slashed open the housing. Sparks bloomed. She yanked fiber leads, spliced red to yellow, yellow to green. Data pulses flashed across the lines like frantic fireflies. She rerouted the link into a dumb oscillator. Heartbeat unchanged forever, regardless of tower status. It might fool the ministry longer than she lived. "Hold this," she told Rafik, giving him one end of a fiber cable. He pinched it, trembling. The whine of a coil gun discharge echoed below. She smelled ozone. Kaveh or Nizar. She couldn't look. Last connection. She jabbed a ceramic wedge into the coolant valve, locked it open. The tower shuddered as super-chilled vapor hissed out, condensing into fog that swallowed the dish. Ice crackled across servo joints. Aliyah grabbed Rafik's shoulder. "Now run." He didn't question her. Together they bounded down the maintenance ladder. Rounds pinged off the pylon. Tracer flares whirred past. Glancing over the rail, Aliyah saw Kaveh dueling 3 soldiers in sand-colored armor. His scythe gleamed as he blocked a baton strike. Then he fired his coil gun point blank. One assailant crumpled. Nizar crouched by a capacitor, wires in hand, ready to detonate. His gaze snapped upward, found Aliyah. She gave a thumbs up. He nodded once. She leapt the last rungs, pushing Rafik ahead, and sprinted toward the dunes. Nizar shouted, "Shield your eyes!" Aliyah flipped her prism shield over her shoulder, like a hood around both her and the boy. Kaveh ducked under his own, diving beside them. White light erupted. Even through the prism, it seared her retinas violet. A boom hit a moment later, rolling the sand beneath her bones. When she risked a look, Generator 9 was collapsing inward, pylons folding like molten candle wax. The main dish sagged, cracked, and toppled. No ruby caps glowed. The illusion city behind them flickered, palace spires spasming, before blinking out altogether. The desert night became honest. The ministry soldiers faltered. Without the projected beacons, Their heads swung in confusion. Kava seized the moment, sprinted toward them with roaring abandon. Two surrendered. One raised a pistol, but saw he was alone and dropped it. Nizar limped over, clutching a seared forearm. "You did it!" he rasped. Aaliyah pressed a watercloth to his wound. "We did it!" She turned to Rafik. The boy stood staring at the dark horizon where the city had been. His cheeks shone, but he wasn't crying. Instead, awe filled his eyes. Terrible, liberating awe, as if he had glimpsed sunrise after eternal dusk. "Your village will live," Aaliyah told him. "And now they'll know the sky is wider than the ministry's cage." He nodded slowly. "I want to see them again." "You will," she promised, though promises in the expanse were fragile things. Overhead, the gyros had veered off. Perhaps their navigational cues died with the tower's broadcast. Aaliyah pictured fleets of pilots now confronted by blank desert, instruments screaming contradictions, and felt a surging flame inside her chest, hope, unforgiving and hot. Kava joined them, panting. "Prisoners tied. We should vanish before their backup tries analog methods." Nizar chuckled despite pain. "First good advice I've heard all day." They gathered what gear they could salvage. Aaliyah slung an extra prism over Rafik's shoulders, adjusting the strap. The boy laughed when the world exploded into fractured color, the sand beneath him swirling into kaleidoscopic arcs. She felt the laugh tug something inside her that had been buried under years of rationed joy. Western wind carried the promise of cooler hours. They walked. 4 silhouettes etched against starlight, leaving wreckage and dormant lies behind. Far off, new mirages trembled into being. Patchy, low resolution, nothing more than flailing ghosts. But Aaliyah raised her prism, and through its sharp geometry, she saw only the undressed desert, wounded yet real. 9 down, Kava said after a while, voice half wonder, half disbelief. "Think the Sun Regent felt that?" "Let him feel it," Nizar grunted. "We'll make him feel 10, 11, and 12 before the year ends." Aaliyah glanced at the cracked horizon, where tomorrow's sun lurked beneath sand and darkness. "One tower at a time," she said. The thought steadied her heartbeat. That, and the weight of glass at her hip catching starlight, turning it into something ungovernable. Truth bent, but truth endured. They pressed on, wanderers armored in prisms, toward the next lie awaiting its shattering dawn.